So welcome, my name is Felix Rosbach, I'm with Comforte AG, and together with me today is Marty Edelmann, CTO of Creative Systems Software. Can you tell us more about you, Marty?
Sure. So, been doing payment and security related things for the last 25 years. Spent about 10 years at the Home Depot where I was responsible for their payments and point of sale systems. So I've been basically running around in the retail security space for a long time.
Have you had any experience with data breaches?
Yes, I have. There was this little incident you might have read about a few years back now where Home Depot lost 56 million credit cards and about the same number of email addresses. So my team was responsible for stopping the breach, fixing it, and ensuring it doesn't happen ever again. So I spent a little bit of time in the trenches.
So what approach has Home Depot at that time to basically react or prevent cybersecurity incidents?
So after the Target breach, which was the first wake-up call for the retail industry, Home Depot started working on encrypting at the swipe dip of a credit card. And so when the breach happened, we were in pilot, and they just happened to get in before we had fully deployed. So we went and we used end-to-end encryption starting upon the card being presented to the Home Depot all the way up into our payment infrastructure. And it works really well. It's a lot of work, and you've got to worry about things like keys and key rotation and things like that, but it's a solid solution.
What technology that is available today would you wish had been available at that time?
So the solution that most retailers use are today upon swipe, they get the credit card, they encrypt it. They then bring it centrally, and from the central location, they'll decrypt it, they'll tokenize it, and then they'll deal with tokens from then on. If I was going to build the solution today, I would tokenize upon swipe. That way I don't have to worry about all the key management, right? If you have 100,000 devices, that means there are 100,000 places that have to have keys. You have to rotate those keys. You have to be able to recover those keys. You have to, over time, be constantly doing things with that infrastructure, which is a lot of pain and suffering. And you don't want encrypted PANs in your environment because that means you have PANs. That is something for somebody to try to attack. I'd much rather have tokens where grab the token, I don't care, you can put it on a billboard outside, the token's useless outside of my four walls. So if I was doing it today, I would tokenize upon swipe and never do the decryption again. I would, absolutely not want to go back down the encryption route anymore.
Talking about the retail space or companies, basically what kind of risks do they face today? What would you see?
I mean, if you're in business, you're under attack. If you have data, you have to worry about folks trying to get either your intellectual property or just PII or PCI data or HIPAA data for that matter. So literally you have government actors, state actors who are attacking. If you look at what happened with Equifax, you have hackers for money, which is what happened to the Home Depot and Target and all the large credit card breaches that have happened. Every company is constantly under attack. The key today, in my opinion, is have nothing worth monetizing. If you break into me and all you find is a bunch of worthless tokens, then you're not going to want to come visit me. You'll go visit another retailer or another enterprise that isn't tokenizing and isn't encrypting their data. And unfortunately, every day we read about another breach. So there are so many companies who are still not worrying about their data. They have point solutions here, they have point solutions there. But as the Equifax breach shows, that was an attack by a government. There is no corporation who's going to be able to withstand an attack by a state actor. It's just impossible. And it's an arms race. I get better, you get better. I get better, you get better. So the key is, instead of trying to engage in an arms race, desensitize that data immediately. Now if somebody gets in, they get a bunch of random bytes, and that isn't worth their time or effort. Just because you've tokenized the data does not mean there's not a way to detokenize it. The key is, though, let's use a credit card number as an example. You can tokenize the credit card, but leave the last 4 digits of the credit card number the same as what they were. Because in retail, you always go and print the last 4 digits of the credit card on a receipt. When you call up for support from your credit card company or even a retailer, they'll always say, what are the last 4 digits of the credit card number? So you don't always need to detokenize the data to have it to be useful. If you want to do householding, which is figuring out who lives in the same house so that you're only marketing to them once instead of 10 times, you could still do things like that against the token. But for instance, if you need that real credit card because now you are doing a chargeback, you can detokenize it, get back to the PAN. The key is to only detokenize when there's an absolute must to have the number in the clear. Same thing with social security numbers, date of birth. You don't really need to have all of the information. There are some use cases where you absolutely need to have a credit card number. When you do, then you detokenize it. But if you look at most businesses, they always, so here's the 16-digit credit card number, and now you have many attack vectors. You have to worry about your internal people, right? People have smartphones. If I'm working in a call center and I know all 16 digits of the credit card because it's on a screen, I can take a picture of that screen. Nothing you can do to stop that. I mean, maybe you could try to stop you from bringing phones and the like in. But 9 out of 10 times, you don't need the full number. You only need a subset. Maybe you need the first 6 to figure out who issued the credit card, last 4 for security. The middle 6, you don't ever need to put in the clear. So it's a matter of changing the way people do business. You don't always need to have the data, so don't give it to them. But when you need it, it's easily done. Three states, right? In my data center, in your data center, a hybrid approach. All 3 of them lend themselves to the same technologies that we're discussing. And as a matter of fact, I would argue that in a hybrid or cloud solution, it's way more important for you to be protecting that data because now there are other folks who do not work for you, right? And I know that Google and Microsoft and Amazon have very good security, but you still have actors who potentially have the ability to get root access on your server. And while most people are good, there's that one bad apple. So I would say if you're going to a cloud, either hybrid or public, you absolutely have to tokenize or encrypt your data before you put it there. You read all the time about S3 buckets that are out in the open and people go out there and oops, look what I found. You don't want to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because somebody someplace inadvertently made a mistake. If you remove the ability to make a mistake, it makes you a lot safer. At the end of the day, it's about trust with your customers. They give you their information. You have a responsibility to protect that data to make sure that no bad actor can get it and do bad things with it. And so that is why you have to either tokenize or encrypt it, and you have to do it as soon as it is presented to you. You cannot let it traverse your network because there are too many points of attack along the way. So some of the stuff that I have worked with clients in the past is on what I'll call transparent, intercepts, where as the data is being written or read, you could have a little intercept piece of code that will do either a tokenization or a detokenization, depending on what you're trying to do. Most of the solutions out there, you don't have to rewrite apps. You maybe have to change 1 or 2 calls, APIs within your app. Most of what I have seen in the work that I've done with my clients most of it is a QA process, right? I've made a change to my application, and then I'm going to spend 6 weeks testing the living daylights out of it to make sure that I don't break their systems, that when they go production, things continue to work. But the actual coding and implementation, that's kind of trivial. It's 2 or 3 APIs, and you're done. The thing that tokenization gives you over encryption that I like a lot is that you can tokenize anything, and you're not going to be breaking the data so badly that in order to use it, you have to decrypt it to be able to do stuff with it, which is important when you're in the PII data, when you deal with HIPAA, when you're trying to be compliant with California consumer privacy or the GDPR regulations. And so you can tokenize literally anything. You can tokenize a name, an address, a social security number, date of birth. Those are things that you absolutely want to, because again, as part of what happened with the Home Depot, is they also lost, 56 million email addresses. Those email addresses are PII pieces of data. If California privacy existed at the time, or GDPR existed at the time, there would be huge fines with losing those email addresses. And so today you need email addresses so that you can communicate with your customers, how you could send them things like receipts or marketing information. But again, most people don't need to see the real email address until it's actually being used as an email address. The other nice thing I like about it is you can do a lot of analytics off of it because you're still preserving the information. So you could decide, hey, I want to know everybody who lives in Brooklyn, New York. Okay, well, Brooklyn is going to turn into the same token regardless of whether it's my address or your address. Therefore, you can go and figure out, how all of your customers who live in a certain area. You could figure out what zip code or what state. So you could still do analytics off of your data without necessarily having to expose it to end users who will potentially do bad things with it. So you absolutely can tokenize pretty much anything. I mean, I don't recommend you go out and tokenize blob information, but if you wanted to, you could do it, right? I mean, you could tokenize a video, but it's silly, and why would you do it? But, people do silly things. So there's a customer that I'm working with as part of their California privacy. They went and they used a unique token to identify every customer. So now, instead of it being last name and last 4 digits of the social security number, they've created a token that does not divulge anything about the customer at all. So now when a customer calls up and says, I'd like you to forget me, easy. I figure out what your token is, and then I just mark that token as they want to be forgotten. And here's the tricky thing about how things like GDPR and the CCPA work. You have to actually retain information about that person to know that they've requested you forget them. But you only have to hold on to the token. So I don't have to have all of the other information about you. I just have to have that one token, which reveals nothing about you. It doesn't leak any information. And now when you come back into my business, either the website or in the store, and I figure out who you are, I then know, oh, wait, you're on my do not collect information list, and I'm able to stay compliant, and I'm doing it in a way that I don't have any true information about you. GDPR's the same thing from the other side, right? You are supposed to be guaranteeing that you're protecting information. There are ridiculously large fines being handed out right now in the GDPR space, and we're going to see that soon in California with their regulations beginning to take effect. The one thing I always talk to my clients about is, so let's say it costs you, and I'm going to make up numbers, let's say it costs you $10 million to do something to protect yourself. It's worth it when you look at $100 million worth of fines coming in, right? I mean, there's $1 billion fine that just got levied, and that is a huge amount of money. If you would have went to the CFO for that company and said, I could fix your problem for $20 million, 20 million versus $1 billion, I'm going to take the 20 every day. And by the way, if I'm off by a factor, it doesn't matter because I'm still doing business, protecting my company and my reputation, and more importantly, I'm protecting my customers. And that's a sacred trust that every company has. People provide information to you, and your job is to make sure that you are protecting it, and some companies have failed at it. Again, most people don't need the actual data. They need to understand the data. So it's more like the metadata is the important thing. If we talk about credit cards, the first 6 digits of a credit card number tell you who issued that credit card, Amex, Visa, Master, Discover. Then the next few tell you what type of card it is. And if it's a bank card, the last few tell you what bank it is. So those first digits are really important. The middle 6, 7, 8 digits, there's no value to it. So you can still work off the first 6 digits without a problem. Leave that in the clear. Let you be able to do all of the mining you need, all of the analytics you need, but you don't have to worry about a bad actor coming along and grabbing that data and doing something that you don't want them doing with it. So it's all about, I want to monetize my data because at the end of the day, companies want to monetize their data. But doing it in a way where you're actually not divulging anything that would be considered sensitive. And so this is where I contrast tokenization and encryption. Encryption is going to take a key and it's going to molest all of my data. And instead of it being 16 digits, it's now going to be 1,000 digits. Make up numbers. And so I can't necessarily do things with it while it is encrypted, which means now I have to start building a lot of metadata around it. But if I go with the tokenization route, I can only worry about that middle 6 digits and the first 6 and last 4, which is what I need, and which is, by the way, what PCI says could be in the clear. Those I could still work with. I could still monetize my data. I can still market to my customers. I can still do analytics and trending off of it. And if you move into the HIPAA space, the health insurance space, it's the same concept. I don't need to know your name. I need to know things about you, but I could work off tokens that tell me blood types and, age ranges and sex and medical conditions without identifying you as having that issue or that, that fact about you.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.